Everybody, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martijn Lofvers. I'm Chief Trendwatcher of Supply Chain Media. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Movement. That's a European quarterly magazine and also a huge LinkedIn group, over 50,000 members. And I'm also the architect of the SCM IT Supermap. We'll talk about it later. But, the most important thing, we have a live webinar next 60 minutes. We'll talk about supply chain optimization for tariffs and other disruptions. So with me, I have two experts. And we have a good conversation and also a live case what to do and how to approach this. So as I said, you can only see me on the left without any glasses there, and in the middle, Rebecca Janowiak. So she's working at Optilogic for 4 years now, and before that she's been working at Lamasoft. So Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you.
And next we have Bhati. He has been working at Caterpillar for a whole long time in the supply chain, so boots on the ground and a lot of practical experience in that sense on supply chain and global level. Also working at Stryker, and after that, you've been working at Anvaya Consulting, doing a lot of supply chain design and supply chain technology usage of that. So Bhati, welcome.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about this hot topic, this webinar will be recorded and will be made available on YouTube. And also the PDF will be made available afterwards within 48 hours. So basically, the audience can interact. You are all on mute, but you can interact with the three of us. So on the right-hand side, you see the chat functionality. So you can chat with each other. But I will check the Q&A bubble one down below. So if you have questions to one of us or all of us, please use the Q&A functionality on the right-hand side. And I will make sure if you have questions that are related to the discussion we're having at the moment, I will ask these questions immediately. If not, I will reserve the questions to the end. So then we'll make sure that you are all engaged and you can all have your question answered within this webinar. If you still have questions afterwards, we have an extra 30 minutes right after the whole hour. So if you want to have in need of a further discussion with the three of us, we'll be sitting at table 1. I will explain later how to get there. Very easy. And make sure if you have more questions, we are willing to have a further conversation there. At this moment, we will put off the camera because you can enlarge your screen so have a better view of the slides and to have some more details for your questions. All right. So basically, this tariffs all started in April 2nd. Then this map was being published, as you can see, and all kind of reciprocal tariffs. But it has changed in literally days. So on the right-hand side, you see April 9 and then April 11. That was a response from China. And then the latest, current state, pending state is in May 12th. But there's also some negotiations still pending. So Bhati, what is your look on all this? If you look at this map.
Yeah, the change in the space is very real, and this is a significant impact to the supply chain. This is now becoming the boardroom conversation at various companies, and everybody is scrambling and making a plan for what should a new supply chain design look like. Mm-hmm. So definitely a very much present and real conversation at many companies.
Yeah, and I think this topic of tariffs has brought supply chain on a board level again. Okay, so like I mentioned, so I'm the architect of the SCM IT Supermap. It's the European version. So basically, what you see here is an overview of all major players in Europe with their applications, and it's proven applications, not what they are offering, but they actually have implemented. So it's ERP, WMS, TMS, and so forth and so on. And of course, Optilogic is also over there, coming over from the US into Europe. And like you see here, they are totally designed for supply chain network design. So they are in a cloud application. And as you see, they are close to Lamasoft or being acquired by Coupa. So that's on purpose. So that's here. So Rebecca, you have landed in Europe, but you have a global presence. So maybe you can tell me a bit more about Optilogic.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, so Optilogic, we've got about 200 plus years of supply chain design experience. We'll go into what design is and how we think about it here in just a little bit. But essentially, we are focused on supply chain design. That is our sole focus around network design, transportation, inventory, cost to serve, risk, and tariffs as well. We also see a lot of people looking at simulation as well, and we leverage that in our tech too. So we are a fully cloud native supply chain design solution. I came from LlamaSoft, as you mentioned, was there looking after the product for about 10 years. Our company was founded by Don Hicks, who is the former CEO of LlamaSoft as well. And here at Optilogic, we live and breathe this stuff. Lots of OR professionals. About 80% of our team is focused on applied research and customer success engineers, so helping our users leverage this. And we're seeing really good use out of it. We have about 600 plus monthly active users. And really what we focus on is enabling users to go get, a free personal account, where what we do is we provision a commercial grade account to do supply chain design, network design, scenario analysis, and really just focus on that, backed by optimization and simulation.
And you have customers both on a consultancy area and also manufacturing, wholesale, and retail and logistic companies.
That's right. Yeah. So we have users all over the world, across all industries, and like you said, we work with lots of partners as well. So consultant agencies like Bhati here, and enable them to do great supply chain design work.
All right. So Bhati, can you tell a bit more about Anvaya Consulting?
Yeah, so what we do at Anvaya, we have a number of service lines that we have here. Our basic mantra is to leverage technology from providers like Optilogic and use it to solve supply chain problems. That's what we do. That is our passion, and that's what we continue to do every day at Anvaya Consulting. Supply chain network design is definitely our sweet spot, our expertise area. We have worked with a number of companies in the supply chain network design space. We have worked with them to build the internal capability, where we have set up a supply chain network design COE, Center of Excellence, for those companies. Or we have worked with them to solve a critical supply chain design problem, a supply chain problem. And we have worked more in the environment with network design as a service for them. Complementary to our network design capability is our transportation optimization service, wherein we work with companies to bring value in the transportation optimization, transportation management space by doing better design of transportation, by implementing transportation management systems, or developing better routing algorithms and plans for them to route freight better and take the freight cost out from their supply chain. We also help companies with supply chain planning in the demand planning, supply planning, and the S&OP space. We also work with the companies on digital procurement space, where we build the spend analytics platforms, or we help them with selecting a right digital procurement tool set to manage their procurement process. We help companies in the technology solution selection and transformation management, where we are helping them to do program management and change management, which is a critical part of any supply chain transformation initiative. Although, as you all know, the supply chain skills are transferable across industry, meaning from one industry to another. These industry focus areas are from our recent engagements. So we have had our recent engagements in industrial machinery, in consumer packaged goods, in oil and gas, automotive, med devices, and the retail spaces. So this is about Anvaya Consulting, and as I mentioned earlier, our passion is to leverage technology to supply chain to solve supply chain problems.
So, Bhati, if I look at the industry focus, I think all the mentioned industry are impacted heavily by the tariffs, aren't they?
Absolutely, they are, Martin, because a lot of these companies are in these industries, especially, they have built supply chain that are long and global, and there is a lot of dependence on the countries that are impacted by tariffs today. So invariably, there is a need to redesign those supply chain, and that's why we continue to work with those companies and leverage technology like Optilogic to mitigate those impacts of tariffs, and more than that, to build a resilient supply chain which is going to be able to sustain tariff or similar kind of supply chain disruptions in future. So our focus is building resilient supply chains for those companies in these industries.
So thanks. So Rebecca, can you tell me a bit more? What do you think? What is supply chain design?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we think about supply chain design as a way that enables people to safely test and implement supply chain changes. So we look at, especially in this world with tariffs and all this uncertainty, how do people have essentially a book of strategies, right? To have a plan for when things change, what should they do about it? What is that exact tipping point? And so at Optilogic, our passion is supply chain design, like we said, and we're really focused on enabling our users to do that through what if scenarios. We heard this year that the big topic has been scenario planning. It's been very much a focus, and we enable our users to do that. It's different than planning and execution systems, right? So with planning and execution systems, you can only improve so much, right? You have very little wiggle room. You've got to implement and take action literally the next day a lot of times. So with design, it enables you to look at both big improvements, so open close types of decisions, but also even decisions of how should you flow or what type of transportation mode should you use the next day, or what to do about the tariffs that are changing day to day. In a safe environment to see your end-to-end supply chain impact.
So there's a safe environment to test things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what I also see right now, you have a more need of design strategy, whereas there's a lot of firefighting going on, but now things are happening so fast that you have to have, like I said, a book of strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, if you only firefight, you're going to set yourself up for failure very quickly, right? And so taking the time to really look at your end-to-end strategy. And when I say end-to-end, I'm talking about all the way up to raw material suppliers, to production, to distribution centers, to your end customers. And any changes you make downstream will impact all the way 3-4 echelons upstream and vice versa. So it's so important to think about that, because if you're only firefighting, you could be making a major detrimental impact to your supply chain further upstream potentially.
So you mentioned you have nodes in your network, maybe to dig deeper. So can you explain a bit more, what you can use it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when we think about supply chain design, it's really about bringing all that data into one place. So your end-to-end supply chain network, right? And modeling that in a safe environment. So you've got all of your nodes and arcs. When I say nodes, it's all of your locations, suppliers, facilities, customers. As well as all of those policies, so business rules that you want to take into account. And how we think about it is you load all of that data in as is today, and then we use the what if scenario capability to ask those what if questions about what should your future supply chain look like? What is the what if potential, and what is the impact on cost, service, and risk?
Yeah. And at what level should you start to gather data to get all this?
So we actually are seeing this evolve. So in the past, you'd go and get, a shipments file or something like that. You'd have to aggregate it up to product family, things like that. We are now encouraging users to go all the way down to SKU level and essentially build out as much of a replica of your end-to-end supply chain as possible and model it at that level, because in today's world, we have the technology with the cloud native technology, as well as from an algorithm space, optimization and simulation, to answer at the SKU level now. And we're actually encouraging users to do that. And what that means as well is that they can then take action much more quickly because it's already at that SKU level, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of talking about digital supply chain twins lately, also on a network level, so not on a machine, on a factory level. So is it in the right space? Is it a supply chain digital twin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you think about a digital twin, it's an exact replica, right, of your end-to-end supply chain. So that's how we think about the data model. So we have a data model to replicate your exact end-to-end supply chain. But of course, there are other implications that you need to think about beyond what you can put in the data, meaning supplier contracts, human interaction, human relationships. So that's where the human aspect and the modeler comes into play when you're thinking about supply chain design.
Yeah, and normally with the supply chain network design, you have a gravity model, and you optimize where you put your factories and warehouses all around the world. But it's more like a snapshot. That was the old days. But now you have you go into the future, and you have different kind of scenarios. So you have a multi-period kind of ways of how to represent it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can do multi-period analysis and look at exactly how your strategy changes by period even, right? So you may have different inventory strategies, transportation strategies based on seasonality, based on whatever the impact of the upcoming tariff could be, right? So that is absolutely something we take into account.
So I get a question from the audience. How is it different than print technology? Maybe it's a broad, but maybe you can answer that, Rebecca.
Yeah. So when we think of we think about when we say the digital twin as a representation in the data model. So it is when many users would equate it to that, but I always like to bring up the fact that even in the data model, there are other elements, like I said before, the human element that you do need to take into account. So you may have a great transportation strategy that is optimal per se, but you may have a very good relationship with certain drivers that you can't necessarily model, right? You could put priority on those lanes or those assets or those providers, but there are some things that you'll never absolutely have to put in the model, which is where the human decision-making process comes in and is key and critical to this space.
And what I see lately is, with digital supply chain twins, they are tapping into ERP data, SKU data on that sense, but you are also digging deep for your network design models to get to that level. So in that sense, you are meeting each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're actually seeing is a lot of users are leveraging API technology to get into, like you said, their ERP systems to Snowflake, things like that, and pull in the latest data every single time they run. So it does absolutely get very close to the reality at this point.
So Bhati, where do you see the appetite for this kind of new supply chain design on a deeper SKU level coming from?
Yeah, so in supply chain network design, there are different level of problems, and that requires the need for a multi-level modeling, if I can say that. So there are business problems in supply chain that are 3 to 5 years out or 5 to 7 years out, and they need to be solved at a level which is more appropriate. So give you a practical example. We concluded the building the supply chain modeling capability at a company, and we built these models. And the first one, the highest level, was solving the footprint decisions 3 to 5 years out for that company. But then key is to be able to use that model at that level, and we ran that model at the product group level or the profit center level for that company, and then be able to run a model which is more practical at SKU level and multi-period. For every month of the year is a period, because the company inherently had seasonality within their demand. So that seasonality need to be modeled through a multi-period model, which is running at SKU level, at individual product level. And those are the decisions that are easily and quickly implementable once they come out of that detail level model. But the key here is also connecting the higher level model with the lower level model. So all the decisions that you're driving in your footprint 3 to 5 years out, you're able to factor in those those decisions in your detailed multi-period models, which are driving immediate changes in your supply chain. So through these changes, you could be moving certain product stocking from one distribution center to the other, or you're changing your sourcing, manufacturing sourcing from making product at one manufacturing site to the other site. And those are very practical, implementable decisions. And they both of those levels of designs find their place at every company.
So I got another question from the audience. Rebecca, you mentioned scenario planning on one hand, but also simulation. The question is it done by discrete event simulation?
Yeah, so yeah, in our tech stack, it is discrete event simulation. So we have both optimization and discrete event simulation. I like to think about optimization as you're optimizing, you're finding the optimal solution to minimize cost, maximize profit, minimize risk, whatever your objective is, and you can adjust what that is in the objective function of the technology. Simulation, think about it as, I like to equate it almost to a spell checker, right? To check the performance of your overall network. So with discrete event simulation, you get down to very specific events, and you can test the performance for, let's say, if you're looking at inventory design, you would use the inventory optimization to optimize your policies, but then you can use simulation to evaluate the performance, right? And so that's how we look at simulation. Same thing for transportation. You can simulate the performance of your multi-stop routes and where are you on time, where are you not.
All right. To get a bit deeper of the level of detail, here are some examples of the way to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it kind of gets back to how we see design evolving, right? So design has evolved from, in the past, we would look at it at an aggregated level of data and maybe evaluate 2 to 3 times a year. That was a few years ago, right? At this point now, what we are seeing is that people are evaluating design and their supply chain at a very detailed level of data. We're seeing users evaluate all the way from infrastructure, open close types of decisions, sourcing decisions, and then getting into inventory policy design, transportation design, and orders and shipments. So all the way down to tactical and operational decisions. And when we think about design, it's really any change in the supply chain. So it could be major open close decisions, or it could be what is a different shift schedule? What's the sequence of the production on a line, for example?
And I can imagine with a Black Friday coming up, for example, that you also have to have some kind of design issues. Do we open up an extra warehouse, extra lanes, etc.?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Bhati, also when you look at this, do you also see more kind of evolving matters in supply chain design?
Yeah, I mean, all of these problems are very real. So there are companies that are battling with the sourcing decisions. Where should we source these products from? And then tariff sort of throws a big wrench in those plans. But then inventory policies and continuously fine-tuning the inventory policies to come up with the right inventory picture. And then seasonality. You talked about Black Friday. Seasonality is key. How do we plan for seasonality? Do we have enough capacity within our network to be able to take care of that seasonal spikes in the supply chain? So all of these problems are very real, and the tool set like Optilogic is definitely geared towards solving those problems with data and facts.
So, Rebecca, you used to work at a previous software vendor, and then in those days, it was up to the experts to use the supply chain network design kind of tool. How has that evolved?
Yeah, great question. So not only are we seeing design being done more frequently, but we're also seeing it evolve from not just individuals or center of excellence COEs. We're seeing it evolve now to where there's entire design teams focused on this and even others across the enterprise. So like you said, Martin, it was limited to just a few analysts who had that very specialized skill set. But what we're seeing now is other stakeholders across the organization want to answer these questions and have self-serve solutions. The other thing too is, frankly, individuals want to help scale, right? And so they want to enable and get other stakeholders across the org who have the expertise in certain areas, right? Suppliers, finance, even marketing, all the way to down procurement or even on the floor, right? Running routes for the day in facilities. How do we enable everyone across the enterprise to be better supply chain design decision makers? But they don't have the skill sets, right? They don't know what optimization or simulation is. They don't know how to get the data and put it into a model. That's what we're looking at as a challenge and a question from a lot of people across this space. And at Optilogic, this is where we're building out solutions to enable them, because this is what people are wanting to do. They're doing design all the time, and they want more than just a small subset of people in their org to be able to do it. They want everyone across the enterprise to be able to answer these types of design questions.
And now, in the cloud space and apps, you have an application that's user friendly, and you have visuals, and everybody's using Google Maps, etc. So I think that also it has been introduced in companies, and everybody wants to use this also for their own purposes in supply chain. But I can imagine that also commercial people are more interested, which market can I reach, and that kind of stuff. And so also other parts of the company are more interested to use this kind of tools.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
And Bhati, do you also see that from your side, that also other parts of the company outside supply chain are interested in to have this kind of tools and access to?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, supply chain problem solving or supply chain design problems are by very nature, they're very cross-functional. Okay, any where we are impacting, let's say, a location of the distribution centers or where we are making that product, it has impact on many different areas. It has different impact on manufacturing. It has different impact on commercial, as to how the commercial teams will be able to convince their customers that, yes, this is in their best interest. This new supply chain design that is being brought forward to them is in their right interest. So the commercial teams are involved, the manufacturing teams are involved, procurement teams are involved, and then various supply chain functions are involved. So definitely there is a far-reaching implications on various different functions within the organization. So definitely it is a capability that is reaching a wider enterprise from that perspective.
So Rebecca, can you explain how does it work in practical sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the Optilogic technology, like we said before, it's a cloud-native platform, and we do have an out-of-the-box solution for supply chain design, which is Cosmic Frog. That is geared towards those modelers, like we discussed before, who are in the weeds on the data, asking those what-if questions, but we have made it really easy to use with beautiful maps and analytics and dashboards. However, in order for, like we talked about on the previous slide, other stakeholders across the organization to be self-serve, answer questions around their supply chain, make better back decisions by optimization and simulation, how we're enabling those users is to leverage the technology from Cosmic Frog, right? Those optimization and simulation engines, but through an interface that is familiar to them. What we're actually seeing is a lot of our users are leveraging optimization and simulation technology behind the scenes from an Excel interface. So we see a lot of users leveraging and actually running and optimizing multi-stop routes. So enabling facility managers to go in, load in their latest shipment file for the day, and then optimize routes. And then they have a great solution to run their routes and feed that into a TMS system, right? Same thing on demand analysis, same thing on inventory. We're seeing a lot of our users leverage this technology through an Excel interface. There's also, though, the API connections on our platform that enable users to leverage it from a web app or a mobile app as well. But really anything that has a Google Sheets or Excel, you can leverage this stuff. And what's really interesting is, again, going back to where the users are leveraging data at the SKU level, because it's all cloud native, you can run everything in parallel, meaning you can ask sensitivity analysis type questions and look at the entire solution curve, and what it'll bring you back with you, or back to you with the result is the optimal solution of where that tipping point is and what action you need to take. So it really speeds up the analysis for everyone, right? And enables them to do it in an interface of what's familiar to them.
All right. I got a question from the audience. Do you incorporate AI-based agents to do queries?
We do. So in true Optilogic fashion, we have a lot of frog related themes. And so we have a feature called Leapfrog. And what that is that enables users, it's an AI backed large language model. And it enables users to ask questions in natural language, right? What is the optimal solution? Where are my 3 riskiest facilities and why? That sort of thing. And then again, you can call that from a solution like Excel or a mobile app or a web app to help other people answer these questions just in a natural language question.
So what kind of use cases do you have for your application?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a lot of use cases. It spans all the way from network optimization, so supply chain network design, like we've been talking about, sourcing optimization, center of gravity greenfield analysis, production, so manufacturing capacity planning, cost to serve, to then inventory, transportation optimization, and so on. I won't read all of these, but it's really end to end is the span of what we look at. And of course, with all of the tariff implications, what we ended up doing actually was building out a tariff optimization engine to help our users better understand the impacts of tariffs on their end-to-end network. And we'll get into that in just a little bit.
So, yeah, maybe you can explain what is the range of reaction you see based on this, but also on the tariff optimization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we talk about supply chain design, it's a span of questions, right? It spans all the way upstream, like we talked about, multi-echelon and multi-period, like we discussed earlier, of what are the impacts to anything in the world, right? So, changes in geopolitical changes in even other things like weather-related data when you get into risk and things like that. But with tariffs, what we're seeing is, what do we do about when there's a big uptick in tariff? Where do we change where we produce? Looking at strategies around sourcing diversification. We're looking at non-traditional markets. Users are evaluating that, of maybe doing something very different than what they've ever done before. Looking at onshoring versus offshoring. Evaluating pricing strategies that are very diverse amongst different SKUs, regions, different product types and families. What we're seeing now too is how, with the tariffs, how do they share costs with their suppliers and working with them, because they don't want to necessarily lose or break contracts, but how do they cope and stay alive, right? And then just looking at the various flow path analysis. So this gets into as well, how do users look at raw materials versus finished goods? So they're evaluating, should they finish and put that, call it, final steering wheel on a car to make it a finished good, to change what the final value is, to take into account what that impact of tariffs are. So they're really evaluating all sorts of things to cope.
So, and Bhati, what do you see kind of response to what is happening with the tariffs and then supply chains?
Yeah, so in our view, what tariff has done, the companies that were operating, let's say, a less than efficient network earlier, tariff has made that problem very visible for those companies, because there is such a big impact tariff has created on those flows. And if those flows are not optimized, even are slightly less than optimal, there is such a big cost pressure that has been created by the tariff impact on those supply chain networks. Hence, the companies have no choice, and they are left with no choice at this point but to operate an optimal supply chain network, which is taking into account the tariff impacts. So what we see is a lot of companies, and it's various different types of responses. The companies are looking at alternate sourcing and doing a lot of flow path optimization. Flow path optimization is a table stake. But companies are doing a lot of alternate sourcing to other countries. They are looking at sort of the finish to order in another place, those kind of options, or they're looking at the local sources as well. So all of those options are on the table for the companies. But as I said earlier, it is operating an optimal supply chain network that has become a necessity after the tariffs.
So will you also see, a lot of companies are looking at that, opening up a sourcing office either in Vietnam or Indonesia or Malaysia, also to look out for new kind of contract manufacturers in those areas. That's one thing what we see. Another thing is what we see in Europe. Companies, European companies that want to export to the US are a bit afraid that that the US government might have a closer look of maybe they are exporting out of Europe products or combination of products into US that might be having some parts from China. Mm-hmm. So they are also aware of that, this kind of things happening. So you have to look closer into your bill of material actually. Bhati, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a fine print in all this, right? We need to look at what's the country of origin of all the components that go into your product, and having a plan for every part, so to speak. So that's needed, and hence the need for doing the analysis more at granular level with professional grade tools like Optilogic. So and that's why a lot of the companies that might be using their best fit Excel spreadsheet at this point may not serve them well, because the analysis is very granular and it needs to be done at a much lower level of granularity with a lot of permutations and combinations to be analyzed. Hence the need for a supply chain design capability like this.
So Rebecca, Optilogic has launched Lumina Tariff Optimizer. Maybe you can explain more what it is and what it can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Bhati was just getting at is just the pure complex nature of tariffs. As you mentioned, I mean, if you get into complex finished goods, there are so many intricate components to it that are part of the bill of materials, like you mentioned, Bhati. And with Lumina, what it enables you to do is load all of that data into the schema, right? So you have that digital representation of your end-to-end network, as well as that very granular bill of materials. And what it enables you to do is first understand what the tariffs actually are. So we'll get into that in a little bit as well. We leverage and partner with Avalara to pull in the latest tariffs. It's an API connection so that you can understand exactly which tariffs apply to your products and what your bill of materials actually is. It calculates what the tariffs are, and then what it does is, as part of the optimization engine and simulation engine, it enables you to understand what the impact of the tariffs are to your end-to-end network and what to do about it. So we're seeing a lot of users ask questions like you see here on this slide of what is the best network path to take advantage of duty drawbacks, right? Because that's a big implication of how you flow throughout the world. There could be duty drawback implications that you could take advantage of, as well as what should your strategy be to mitigate tariffs, right? And the impact, so you're not paying more across your end-to-end network. And then a lot of our users are again, looking at what the impact is today, but then looking at the longer term strategy. What is the future of tariffs? Nobody knows, frankly, right now, and it's changing day to day, right? But using the what if scenario capabilities, you can ask what if questions, do sensitivity analysis of what if it goes up by 1, 2, 10, 50, 150% in some cases. What is that impact to cost, service, risk metrics, things like that.
And you know, you have different kind of versions. I understand.
Yes, in terms of the solution, that's right.
Yeah.
So so in terms of how our users are leveraging the Lumina tariff optimization engine is a couple different ways. So we've baked the optimization and simulation engines into our overall platform. Those are then able to be called by Cosmic Frog. So if you're leveraging Cosmic Frog, which again is that out-of-the-box supply chain design solution, you can automatically populate those tables yourself, or leverage Avalara, which is the way to do that direct API connection to get the latest tariffs, right? But what we also have, it's the middle box there, is a solution through an app. So we're leveraging a Cosmic Frog for Excel app to do tariff optimization from there. What this does is it enables other stakeholders across the organization to access your end-to-end data and do the analysis as well. So they can very simply say, well, what if it goes up by 10%, 15%, whatever, and then push a button right from Excel, and then it comes back with a solution to tell you what the impact is to that network. And so they can actually self-serve and do it right from Excel as well.
All right. And there's a QR code, so the users can try it out. You know, we'll get that at the end also. But Bhati, maybe you can explain. You have been doing a lot of supply chain network design projects, but also in this turbulent world of tariffs, you have done some projects. Maybe first you can explain in general what this process looks like, and then we get to a case, and then we go deeper.
Yeah, absolutely, Martin. So what we have here is a 6-step process to build a supply chain resilience. So once we build a resilient supply chain, it will be able to have any kind of impact due to tariffs or other supply chain disruptions mitigated. So what we do in this 6-step process, we start with assess, then build, model, evaluate, plan, and implement. This is our framework to build a resilient supply chain. What we start with is to assess the impact of tariff, for example. So we understand what is the financial impact on your current sourcing strategies, and it is not a small number because these tariffs are percentage of the goods, cost of goods, and anything that is applied as a percentage of cost of goods, it turns out to be a much bigger number. And then it becomes a big cost pressure on supply chain. What we also understand is what are the affected products and suppliers, and which segment of the supply chain, if that can be isolated, is most impacted by the tariffs. Once we understand the business problem, then we build a digital twin, which is the digital replica of the physical supply chain. This is where we integrate all the data sources, the imports, the freight movements, the sourcing locations, the volumes, the current pricing, and all of that. And we use that to build that digital twin in the form of a baseline scenario. Once we have done that, then we go on and proceed the use of advanced modeling tools like Optilogic, and we run alternate sourcing options. As Martin described earlier, we're looking at alternate sourcing countries like Vietnam or Malaysia or Thailand or other Finnish locations like Europe or Mexico or anything that there could be. We look at all those different sourcing options and we simulate the cost implications and assess the risk factors. Once we have done this, and this scenario modeling might look like just one little box here, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, and there are a lot of scenarios that get analyzed in this. Once we do that, then we we look at every single what are the cost avoidance strategies that company is most comfortable with. Are they more looking to do an alternate sourcing, or source and finish somewhere else, or local sourcing? What are the right options? We bring all of those things into the tool as different solutions and options, and we understand, we simulate the impact of that on the total landed cost for the company, or total cost of ownership, whatever is the terminology you're most familiar with. Once we have done that, all this time, what we are looking to do is to develop an executable cost avoidance plan. And it needs to be executable because it needs to be run at the individual product level, SKU level, because as we talked about earlier, there needs to be a plan for every single component, every single part that is part of either your bill of material, or if you're buying finished products from your contract manufacturer, it's a plan for all of your products. And that needs to be structured in such a way that it can be easily implemented, and it can be easily agreed and aligned with your key stakeholders, because they are in many different functions, in transportation, in procurement, in manufacturing, and in commercial, all of the other functions. Once you have an executable plan, then it is about implementing that plan and monitoring the changes. If there are changes in the tariff policy, again, we are able to simulate those decisions very quickly. So the key here really is to build a proactive, predictive modeling capability, a decision-making capability that continues to serve the company. Even after the tariff wave blows over, there are going to be other disruptions that will come, and this capability will reside and remain with the company, and will help deliver that resilient supply chain.
So before you get to an example you have done, before it blows over, do you expect it will blow over, or things are already happening with all kind of ripple effects, front loading, etc.? So do you expect it to blow over?
I think that's $1 million question, first of all. But I think whichever state we are in right now, what is absolutely needed is a plan. Okay, there could be multiple versions of those plans. There could be a plan which says that what if it blows over? Then I operate a supply chain like this. And in that process as well, when you are evaluating your supply chain, we are finding value in the supply chain network design, supply chain optimization, even if the tariff impact completely blows over. Okay, but there are the capability here really helps align various scenarios. What if it impacts in a medium way, not a big way? Okay, all of those capabilities can be analyzed. But I think to your question, Martin, I think the companies need to have a plan for either situation. Okay, that's the key we are outlining here.
So how long does it take to get through this process and to get to these steps?
Yeah, so and this is on my next example. This is where we ran this process for 5 weeks. Okay, 5-week modeling exercise. So these are not elaborated multi-month exercises. This is a 5-week engagement that we concluded with an oil field equipment manufacturer. And let me just take a bit of time and explain their current network. And their current network, this is their aftermarket distribution network. And this was tailor-made for a big impact on tariffs, hence a poster child, so to speak, for optimization of their supply chain network because of tariff impacts. So this company had a lot of plants in different regions of the world, in 3 different continents, in Americas, Europe, and Asia. and they had suppliers in those respective continents as well. Earlier, their supply chain, and again, this is talking to those inefficiencies that might be hidden in your network and not visible, and it was made visible because of the tariff. So all of their plants and their suppliers in the USA and Asia were shipping into a global hub that was located in the US. And that hub was serving the spokes in the region and out of the region. And there were 2 other regional hubs that were receiving the supply either from the global hub or from the local suppliers, okay, and serving their spokes in the region, okay. So in this kind of a network, as you can imagine, there's a lot of cross-country flow where product is coming from a country A, going to a country B, only to be shipped to a country C, and then maybe finally consumed in a country D. This was the network. This was very complex. They had 3 hubs and 29 spoke distribution centers and many, many thousands of final customer delivery points. Their flow decisions were not based on the total landed cost, and their mode selections were based on the historical considerations. And all of that led to very suboptimal network with excessive transportation and handling costs and very excessive tariff costs due to routing products through some of these intermediate countries where they could not implement the duty drawback programs and such. So very, very, very high cost for the company. We conducted this a 5-week modeling exercise beginning to the end and delivered the results in 5 weeks. And what we did is we developed the scenario modeling capability in Optilogic, leveraging the tariff optimization within the Cosmic Frog, and we delivered them a new network recommendation, very executable network recommendation, and we did that over 5 weeks, and we identified $8 million savings in freight, in the tariffs and duties, and in the variable handling costs. So it was 3 million, 3 million, and 2 million. So that's the 8 million. And within 1 month, we gave them such an executable plan. Within 1 month, they had already implemented $1 million worth of annual savings. So this is the kind of capability we are talking about. It's very practical. It's very implementable, very executable, because these models, these capabilities are run at individual SKU level, and the impact and the changes are also identified at individual SKU level. Hence, they could be very easily implemented within your existing systems and processes. So that's what we had a great success doing it.
Yeah. If I look at this great case, I was wondering, what kind of data was needed and what were the challenges gathering the data for this kind of model?
Yeah, so a lot of data challenges. There were data challenges related to the demand planning. Okay, so right now it is easier for that company to plan all of their requirements at the global hub level. Now, with the change in the new sourcing matrix, okay, they will have to plan at individual spoke level. So their demand planning process needed to be changed, and we needed the new outputs of their new demand planning process. So getting the demand data, which is at the individual product and quantity level, is one thing, but also the weights and measures of their products was a big challenge in collecting that data. So we were able to collect that. We had to go and look at certain of their distribution centers and collect data from many different sources, and then other data related to their overall handling cost or the product handling cost at different sites, their freight data. A lot of challenges, but I think that's where the modeling expertise comes into the play. how do we work with limited data set and be able to take right assumptions and leverage our expertise in taking those assumptions and come up with a workable model. If we wait for the perfect data, there will never be a time when we will have a perfect data. So it is to take the right kind of assumptions and leveraging our expertise to come up with the right kind of recommendation for the clients.
But I can imagine if you look at this kind of model and the outcome, that you would get a more differentiated strategy depending on certain customers, certain regions, and also certain product groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it would be very different because every customer has a different kind of a supply chain and a different business problem. So yes, it would be differentiated, but the basic premise of how do you model and how do you go about populate the tool and build that digital twin, some of those things would be the same, but then the analysis itself will be geared towards solving a specific business problem for the customer.
So I got a question from the audience. I don't know if you are willing to answer, but is it possible to provide an idea of investment needed for such a modeling? You know, there's a quick payback, but maybe you can say something about that, Bhati?
Yeah, so what I can say is it was hundreds of maybe more times the savings that we generated from the investment that we made in modeling. So it's a very small amount as compared to the savings we generated. So if anyone is interested in knowing the exact amount, I'm happy to answer that question in more of a one-on-one. But the kind of savings that we are talking about, it's a very, very small amount as compared to that number.
So another question from the audience: did you aggregate the lanes or model it as at the SKU level?
This was done at the SKU level. So every single lane and product was modeled at the SKU level. So no, we did not do aggregation in this model.
Okay. So Rebecca, I can imagine, also if you have this kind of cases, and getting back to the tariffs, it's also the matter of what kind of business at risk because of the tariffs.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I think in terms of when companies are looking at what's at risk, it's a very diverse group all across the various different industries, different regions that we're seeing. And then within that, various questions around production, around end customer strategies, right? So it's very diverse, but that's the beauty of the technology is you can look at all sorts of different industries, different businesses, and what those impacts are.
So getting to the Q&A at the end, we are nearing the end of the webinar. I was wondering, Rebecca, who is mostly involved? Where do you get your requests for this kind of supply chain design challenges?
So again, it's across the board with specifically with tariffs. Obviously, a major impact is on steel, aluminum, so heavy production type of automotive companies. But of course, retail is heavily hit by this as well because of the China impact. European countries are also evaluating now how do they work with the US and vice versa, right? So we are seeing it across the board. And the really tricky thing, like we were talking about, is not only what are the tariffs, but how do they actually impact my specific company? So getting into details around what the classification of my products are, the HS codes, that's all very tricky stuff. And how we've leveraged that technology through Avalara is to connect users to that, to enable them to better evaluate and understand the impact and then what to do about it.
So Bhati, I think, we talk about tariffs and that are changing, still negotiating, taking place. But, we're also talking about quotas. It's, you have to also be aware of, not only the tariffs as such, but also are my imports part of a certain amount of quotas?
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those things make the decision making and the analysis process even more complex. When you're dealing with the import quotas for certain kind of products, and that provides another constraint on the supply chain. And hence, my request to everyone is that this is the time. Let's maybe come off of those Excel spreadsheets that someone might be having, and looking at all those scenarios and trying to do all that on the Excel spreadsheets, and let's migrate onto the platforms like this, wherein those kind of scenarios and decisions can be quickly simulated, and outcome can be quickly generated and can be implemented very quickly. And whether that's building constraints, as Martin said, like quotas, or any other constraint on the supply chain, or looking up, as Rebecca said, looking up what is the right duty rate for a product, which could be very different on a same country to country lane, one product versus other. It could be a very different duty rate. Looking it up with the data and facts using a service like Avalara or others, and doing the right kind of analysis is the need of the hour for a lot of the companies.
So we're ending this webinar almost. So next to this, we have an extra 30 minutes. So we have more questions. If you want to have a further conversation with Bhati, Rebecca, and me, please join us here at in the virtual lounge. So next to this, there are some links. So to the IT submap map, and in the middle, you see a checklist for supply chain tariff readiness we have created together with Optilogic. And there's also a link to the Lumina tariff optimizer. You can have a demo, and you have the contact details of both Bhati and Rebecca. So with this, I would like to wrap up, and I would like to thank you, Rebecca, for explaining all this. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And also Bhati, for your knowledge and your expertise, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Martin.
And the audience, thank you for watching and for these questions and for watching either live or the recording. I would like to thank you all for listening in, and I would like to thank you now. And maybe you will join us in the virtual lounge right after this, or maybe I see you in another webinar Wednesday. Thanks for now, and bye bye.